Okay, boys, you know what time it is. It's time for that highly anticipated Nasus guide to come out. The legendary S Plus Killing for Days Nasus. The Climarino in ranked. The 642 stacks at 20 minutes, that type of Nasus. Yeah, this is going to be the highly requested guide for it. And I'm going to go pretty in depth in this guide. So, currently overview. I don't know, toughness high. I'll just go over the abilities mostly, but yeah. I'll go with the passive later, but this is the main bread and butter of the Kayn right here. It's the Kayn himself, the Q. He Qs in the enemy, and if he last hits a minion, he gains 3 extra bonus damage with this Q. It increases his auto attack damage, and that starts smacking kids for half their health. Sometimes even one-shots them if you get ahead. But it's pretty strong. Next we have his W, Wither. It slows the enemy champion a lot, making the slow increases over time. It also slows their attack speed, which is really useful 1v1 scenarios and chasing down enemies. And also if you're getting ganked, you just throw that on one of them and try to run away. E. It AoE magic damage, then damage over time. Use it mostly just when you're try to always fight inside it whenever possible. Like some of you just have to chase them down, but also throw your E before your Q, because the E also lowers their armor by a percentage. And then you smack down your Q, it does even more damage. But yeah. And his ult is like Super Saiyan God key level over 9,000, where you gain health automatically, you gain bonus in armor magic resist automatically, you gain bonus in armor and magic resist for each second that you're ulting for, and you have an AoE around you, magic damage percent health, scaled with AP, but you're not really building any AP on Nasus unless you want, like, feeling like you want to have fun today, you know, just troll around. But yeah, you also, the one buff that just happened recently is when you're ulting, your Q cooldown is halved. So late game that hits insane, where it's usually like 2.2 second cooldown late game. But when you're ulting, it turns to 1.1 second. So you're basically what you do is you auto attack reset, keep doing that, and chase them down. But yeah, since you mostly build in tanky, and then you use the passive, which gives you bonus lifesteal. But if you have a lot of Q stacks and your E down, then you just insane amount, like you just lifesteal insane amounts. Just late game 200 health for every Q. It's crazy, but yeah. And you also, everyone knows, there's only 2 Nasus skins you can run. You run the Pimp Cane Nasus, right? You see that Pimp Cane, yeah. Or you know, Infernal. But I don't have Infernal. I just run the Pimp Cane because Pimp Cane's cool. Look at that. I'll also show the runes and masteries I usually run. For runes, change that up. I run all lethality. The lethality is just, it's just complicated mathematically. Like, it's better to run lethality than it is to run like attack damage or attack speed, because when you Q, it's a lot of physical damage, but if you increase it by your AD, let's say you have like, it already does 800 damage, you're running 15 extra AD in your runes, so you get 15 extra damage. But if you're running 20 lethality, 20.8 lethality in your runes, And you go attack anyone like has 100 armor with that. Lowers their armor by 20. I think their it goes from 50% resistance to like around 40%. So increase your damage basically from 50 to 60 is like a ratio. So instead of 800 damage, you're doing closer to like 970, 980. So it's a really big increase in damage, and just my preference of why you would run lethality instead. But yeah, I run lethality. You make sure you also, in arcade thing, you run. I know they're expensive, but it's worth it. Or not that. You run a cooldown reduction, flat cooldown reduction, quintessence. Then you also run flat cooldown reduction glyphs. You start the game with 10% cooldown reduction. Make sure you get all the stacks. It's very necessary for just necessary for the stacks. You know, stacks are life. You just try to get stacks. Get to the point where you can just run it down 1v3. That's what you do as Nasus. Try like you're basically on an island up there. You mostly stay up there and you win, unless your team just sucks and throws the game. But if they're halfway decent, you just can carry the game. Even if it's like the only thing that can really stop you is just the Fed Vein. So just focus on the stacks. Run the cooldown reduction. Try to hit the 45% as early as possible, and then run it down. Take turrets quick and destroy everything. And for the seals are pretty flexible. I usually just run flat armor, but if it's a really easy lane, you can always run like scaling health, scaling armor. But I I wouldn't do it that often because the early game is the only way you can fall behind as Nasus. And yeah, you just want to survive the early game because late game's free anyway. So what I usually just run is flat armor. Sometimes I might just take 3 off because I know flat armor is one of the like least gold efficient runes in the game, but you have to take it because of just the matchups top lane. You're just gonna run down if you don't. But sometimes I just take a little bit of scaling just because, throw it in there because it's 3 times more efficient at level 18. By the time you're level 6 with your ult, you're at the same armor as it would have been if you were to run flat. But that just the early level pre-6 is what you got to be careful of, and just make sure you run the armor. But yeah, it's risky otherwise, but yeah, gotta do it. For Masteries, I for sure go deep into the cunning, take either precision or intelligence. I know almost everyone says intelligence is better, and sometimes it is, but the more lethality you get on top of the lethality you have already, like if you look at it, it's 1.2 lethality. Oh, I gotta show you what it adds up to. But yeah, you for sure want to take savagery, bonus damage, hit the last hits. For next up, I usually run assassin. The secret stash could work well for early game, but the 1v1 scenarios, I just love to run assassin for him. For this, yeah, meditation. I love murdering meditation always because I always just run out of mana because I stay up there for a long time stacking. But merciless is not a bad option. Sometimes you want to take like half and half, and that always works good. But I just love the mana regen from that. You just never run out, and you keep staying up as long as you have the health for stacking. And with your passive lifesteal, you can just stay up. But once you're out of mana, it's really hard up there because you're out of mana to Q, you're out of mana to do anything else. But yeah, this next tree right here, these next 3, is pretty flexible. I usually run Dangerous Game just for the big fights. I get Goon Squad in the outplays. But Green Forest is also a very good option to run because you just step in the bush. If they face check you, you EQ, just one shot them. because it does that bonus percent health damage. Bandit, it's okay. Personally, I believe the R2 is better, but if you're just trading in lane, 10 gold, that's a good amount. If you just auto attack throughout the lane, you generate a lot of gold. You are really every 5 seconds you do that. So if you actually keep track of this thing and try to attack as much as possible, you'll be making bank. Because they always want to try to fight you as Nasus early on. So in lane you do that, make a lot of money. It's actually not a bad option. But I usually run dangerous game for that. Next up, another harder decision. The 45% cooldown reduction is really good for just, like, the more cooldown reduction you get, the more, it's not just, like, the more cooldown reduction you get, the better the more efficient it is. Because, let's say I have 0% cooldown reduction. I have an ability that's 10-second cooldown. Okay, I do that every 10 seconds. I have 20% cooldown reduction, and 20% cooldown reduction, 10-second cooldown, 80.8 seconds, or like an 8-second cooldown, so I could use that in like a fight that's lasting 40 seconds, or I'm just saying I'm like using the ability for 40 seconds on cooldown. I can use the 8-second ability 4 times instead of 5. Sorry, my bad. 5 times instead of 4 if it were 10 seconds. But if I had 6 seconds for an ability, it's not a 1 increase. You can use it 40 divided by 6. It's like 6.6, 6.7 around there. But yeah, it's insane because it's not a 4 to 5, it's a 5 to almost 7 then. So for the seconds, or the amount of times you can use in 40 seconds, but really good option. Precision, since you're running lethality, it's better the more lethality you have, lethality efficiency, because the more armor you take away more of the resistance, the less armor they have. Like, if you attack someone with lethality, let's say you have 50 lethality, someone has 100 armor, you're dealing, I think it's, 50% damage to 100 armor. You bring that down to now you're dealing 66% damage when because you have 50 lethality. So you're doing 66% damage. That's the increase of, I don't know, like 30% or so. But if they're at 66%, or 6% resistances, and you have 50 lethality, they have 50 armor, you have 50 lethality, brings it to 0. Then that means you're bringing them from 66% of your damage being dealt to them to 100%. That's a 50% increase instead of the 30 from 100 to 50 armor, 100 armor to 50 armor. So if you just stack a ton of lethality, like sometimes I even buy lethality items on Nasus, because if you get ahead, I got the lethality in my runes. I gain 6 lethality from this, so that's like almost 27 lethality. You buy one item that gives you lethality, Ghost Blade or Dust Blade, one of the two, and then you're running 45 lethality right there, and it's a lot of damage. But yeah, either one of this, they're both really good. It's a hard decision. But yeah, for next Keystone, Storm Raider Surge is pretty much the way to go. Rare occasion Thunderlords, but it's not really worth it compared to Storm Raider. Just running down like 1Q on an enemy, you deal 30% of their max health. And that means you gain the movement speed and you could chase them down and there's no escaping. They'll get an RQ and just finish them off. And the slow resistance is also a really big deal, because the one thing that Nasus weakness is just getting kited. But if you have 75% slow resistance, have fun kiting that. He's just going to run you down. Usually, you go resolve afterwards. You take the unyielding, bonus armor and magic resist. It also goes off if your alt's bonus armor and magic resist. So it gets pretty insane. The amount of that provides to tough skin. And you go for sure runic armor. The healing from your passive, it's way better than the veteran scars. It provides way more. And it's I usually just run insight or fearless. You run fearless if you're going against like Urnectin or Echo or just something that's a more bursty champion that just does their whole combo right away, you know, because that provides that a ton of bonus armor magic resist right when they're doing their burst, which really helps a lot in lane. But insight, you always love having that ghost up, having the teleport up, keep on stacking, run them down whenever possible. But yeah, just depends what the lane's looking at. I usually run fearless because most lanes they pick something insane Nasus, I can just run it down. But yeah, but this isn't the only option. You can also go ferocity. I usually run attack speed and ferocity. The sorcery that it doesn't actually increase the ability damage for the Q, so I just run the extra attack speed, so it keeps smacking them. You have a ton of lethality. You have Triforce, so you're attacking pretty fast. Next up, I run Fresh Blood. You know, you gotta Q, you know, you Q them. Fresh Blood, extra bonus damage, which helps with the one-shot potential. Next, Natural Talent and Vampirism. Vampirism isn't bad, but you already have Lifesteal from passive, so in my opinion, I just like running Natural Talent. Extra late game stats. You're running the extra attack speed, Triforce everything, you gain extra attack damage, helps out. And you also run ability power, because your ult scales off ability power, your E scales off ability power. It does extra damage quite a bit, actually. So, always not bad to run. And lastly, either Battle Trance, which is what you usually run, or you can actually run Double-Edged Sword. You don't run Bounty Hunter because you're not really getting kills for any other laner except the lane you're going against. Maybe your jungler because they'll go up and try to kill you but then die. But usually won't just Double-Edged Sword or Battle Trance. Like, it's more preference. If you just like the quick burst arena, you know, EQ, smack them down, Double-Edged Sword, just long fights, Battle Trance, like, it's preference. But yeah, I'm mostly just going to resolve though, more often than ferocity, but especially if it's a harder lane, resolve's the way to go. If not, if you think you're doing good, ferocity for the extra damage, not bad option. But resolve just scales so well with the percents on it. Just the percents in a nutshell, they're good scaling compared to flat. But yeah, more just preference. For summoner spells, Ghost and Teleport. That's what you usually run. If you're going, you can always run Flash also. Flash, Teleport. Or if you're really, like, I don't almost ever run this, but Flash and Ghost if you really want to, just run them down. But I almost run always Teleport Ghost. Because Teleport get you back to lane if you get low, chunked out early. Also, if you get to the point where you can teleport into another part of the map, which you don't really want to do as Nasus if you don't have to, but if you absolutely have to, you can teleport in somewhere else. But I also like Ghost just for the rundown potential. And it's a lower cooldown than Flash, and you're usually doing prolonged fights, so if you have the extra movement speed, you can get stuff done, get work done. But Flash is also good against if it's a real hard kite comp. And also Yorick's Cancer, and that wall, you gotta flash it. Yeah, and for item builds, I will have to show you some of the main stuff you want to run. So at the beginning, it's a very flexible. First, like your starting item, very flexible. The most common one I run is Door and Shield. By far most common. It's just the survivability on the item's insane. Just really helps with those really aggro lanes also. Especially if you're going like the resolve tree. Door and Shield way to go. But otherwise, I would, if you want to rush that Sheen for a Sapphire Crystal, gives you extra mana in lane to just keep stacking Q. But if it's a harder lane, you might not want to. If you're going against a heavy AD champ, sometimes you just get cloth armor, so you can rush into a Graceful Shroud right away. And that really helps with the cooldown reduction. You try to get that cooldown reduction by 45% by 12 minutes. Try to hit that, then you're good. The game will be easy. But yeah. And also, another thing you can do is just start Ruby Crystal and go Kindle Gem. If you're going... Rarely I do that. Very rarely. The main three is Cloth Armor, Door and Shield, Kindle Gem. That's the way to go. But if this is... There's one other option if it's extremely easy lane. Like, extremely easy. Maybe there's a Mundo or something's just trolling, you know. Ancient Coin. Because it gives you extra gold lane, you know, and everything, but the main thing is it gives you cooldown reduction. And starting the game out, if you run the cooldown reductions in your runes and masteries, and then you run Ancient Coin, that's a 20% cooldown reduction. Level 1, going into lane, you're stacking for days. But it's also nice to have the gold regen. You also get the mana regen, you know, if you keep spamming stuff. Because of the passive, extra gold from the passive. You make your money back with the item also. So, if it's really easy in lane, that's the ultimate scaling. Ancient Coin is the way to go, if it's just a free lane. Also for potions, refillable, you never run a refillable. Almost never. The way to go is just clock up on the regular health potions. Because you're going to be, if you're running refillable, you're probably going to sell it. Probably going to sell it really soon. Because the life steal you get once you start getting levels is pretty insane. You're not going to need potions. So what I do is usually just run health potions, max them out in first buy. You just get your starting item, gives health potion. And also probably depends how the lane's going. If the lane's going good, I don't get them. If it's a tough lane, I do buy some health potions, maybe second back, just because it's easy to get the sustained farm, keep your Q stacks up. But yeah, I'll go through all the items, you know, just Kindle Gem, one of the items you want to get early. Glacial Shroud, another item you want to get early. For boots, almost always Merc Treads. Or Merc Treads almost always, because just the tenacity from that helps against the kite. Swifties aren't a bad option if there's a lot of slowing. It's actually not bad. It's probably my second most common boots I buy. Just run them down, extra movement speed, no counterplay. Sheen, Sheen is probably the item to get early. You buy that thing, extra damage on the Q, cooldown reduction, mana. It's the way. It's probably the optimal item to get right away. Sometimes, if your lane's going really well, you might want to get a Warhammer. I know most people don't do this, but build it into either Ghost Blade or Dust Blade. Because, like I was saying earlier, lethality. You run lethality, stacks on top of each other. It's more efficient the more lethality you have. And buying that Warhammer gives you cooldown reduction, which you need. And then it builds faster into your lethality. I usually don't finish the lethality item until I have the CDR, so I usually get a Triforce first, then lethality item. But yeah, if it's a really hard magic lane, you rush Spirit Visage first or second item. Usually second unless it's really bad. You want to rush the Triforce, but if it's a real bad pokey lane, Teemo, Cancer stuff, run Spirit Visage, get the extra regen, magic resist. It's all around a great item for Nasus. Like 30% extra healing with your passive, that's insane. Even if it's even if they're like no magic damage dealers in the game, you want to get it sometime in the game because it's perfect. It's like almost meant for Nasus. Like I know it's like Mundo, you could, but Nasus with your passive cooldown reduction also, so you just rush that Kindle Gem. Sometimes if it's Teemo, you actually rush this. Screw the CDR. If you can't survive in lane, you can't stack. Why do you need CDR? So you get the Spectral Cow right away. And if I Dorn Shield Spectral Cow against like a Teemo or something, you're fine. The regen is insane. But yeah, you just Phage. Usually you actually get Phage third item for your Triforce. You go Sheen, then you go to your Stinger for the cooldown reduction. Then you get Phage. And usually you don't get Phage, you just get Triforce right away because of the small gold difference, 300 some. Righteous Glory isn't a bad item on Nasus. Just run it down, you know, if you start that cloth armor, get that. I usually get Triforce first before Righteous Glory, but Righteous Glory isn't a bad option. Gargoyles don't play. You usually get that later item if you're forced to team fight. It makes you insane. You all activate this. I don't know. There's not many champions in the game that can get tankier than that. And ulting Nasus with Righteous or with a Stoneplate. That's OP. It really is. If you're forced to team fight, not a bad way to go. I rarely go Iceborne Gauntlet, almost never. It's more of like a discount item combination of Frozen Heart and Triforce, but I don't really like running it that much. It just doesn't seem it scales as well into late game. You just use a cheap way to get both items, but it's nice, but yeah, I kind of like the other itemizations better. Frozen Heart, if full ED team, get that right away, then the game's over. Like, no joke. I don't usually buy it because I'm winning hard enough to not buy it, but it's never a bad option. It slows down just the item, the stats it gives. It's beautiful. Look at that, armor. Okay, you get armor, you win everything, 90 armor, that's OP. Any physical damage champion can't do anything. Cooldown reduction, 20%, that's really good. 400 mana, you never have to run out of mana then. Especially with your meditation and your masteries. Doing good. And attack speed of all nearby enemies decreased. Free low. Can't fight you. And that stacks on top of your W. So they're not going to attack. Combine that with Random Omen. The game's over. If they're full AD, they just lost. Unless it's Vayne, Vayne's OP. But yeah, Spirit Visage, good item. Adaptive Helm, buy it if you're going against, Cassio, anything, that's not a bad option. Rarely buy Warmogs because you just regen from your passive. Thornmail, always decent item. Going against a lot of auto attackers just makes them not attack you. I usually get that like third item, fourth item. Helpful. Ghostblade. If you want the lethality, Ghostblade. You run them down. It's just all the stats it gives are pretty good. Attack damage, cooldown reduction, lethality, movement speed out of combat, which really helps you run around the map, get into lane, keep stacking. Always a good option. And the unique active just helps you run them down. It's basically a ghost and a ghost. Random Omen, if you're going against a lot of auto attackers, crit damage Yasuo. Buy this Yasuo. Against Yasuo. Free. Freelo. Going one shot build, Dustblade, lethality. Dead Man's one of the best armor items you could get. Gives you that movement speed, extra damage on your Q for your first shot. You buy that, in Triforce, you're gonna be one-shotting kids. No joke, it's pretty good. Really buy Edge and Knight unless I'm throwing like full lethality Nasus, which sometimes you need to do. Bork, it's actually not as bad of an item as you might look. Maybe you want to run Triforce and Bork. It's a great dueling item. It's just usually time you want to build more resistances, and sometimes you just don't have. Yeah, it's just not worth it sometimes. But you want to duel, it's always a great option. Never buy Ravenous Hydra. It's not that good actually on Nasus. Titanic Hydra, unless it's like really late game, not that good. Because it gives you the extra damage. You just do the one punch, one Q with the Titanic Hydra active. Increase damage with all your other items. Try to one-shot kids, but yeah, try to avoid those two items. It makes it hard stacking because you're always pushing out the wave with your items. Triforce, the bread and butter, the 1G, OG, best G. But Triforce is the best item on Nasus. All those stats, every single stat it gives, really good on Nasus. Its unique passives, really good on Nasus. Every time you Q, you're doing a ton of damage, and then you increase it with Triforce. Almost always rush it. Unless it's a hard lane, rush your resistances first, but always first or second item. Bloodthirster, Mercurial Scimitar, very situational. If you're like raid boss mode, get Bloodthirster. Your Bloodthirster plus your passive plus Spirit Visage, you're regenerating for over half the damage you deal. So it's pretty troll, but it's pretty effective actually. And then if you get kited a lot, get this, one of your last items. Not a bad option actually, but sometimes, usually don't run it. Almost never run it, but very high kite comp. Pretty good option. And for elixirs, almost always Elixir of Iron. Tenacity and slow resistance is OP. If they don't have actually much CC, sometimes Elixir of Wrath is a good option, but almost always Elixir of Iron. Almost always. Yeah, that's gonna be the first part of my guide. Just going over builds, runes, masteries, a lot of stuff in depth. I'll come out with some gameplay in just right now. Might add one video. Let's go, boys. Gameplay next.